Hey everyone, I just wanted to give you my top 10 PvP tips. I have played this game more than most people have ever played any video game ever. I've played for thousands of hours over the course of years and years and years. I think I've been playing this game like 7 years now, something like that. Been a long time coming. So, I just wanted to give you 10 tips that really helped me up my gameplay, and hopefully they help you up yours. Number one would be Dauntless. It's a silly little trait. It only costs 1 point. Most hunters come with 10 trait points. Not all of them, but most of them. So you at least have a little wiggle room to grab this trait and grab some other traits on a fresh, brand new hunter. I highly recommend bringing it every time. I bring it every time. It creates a ton of openings in PvP scenarios, whether it be stopping chokes from landing on bodies you're trying to burn. Like, let's say you kill an enemy combatant, their teammate is trying to put out the fire that you started on them to burn away their life. They throw a choke, you dauntless it. Well, it creates a scenario where they either have to throw another choke or they have to approach themselves. Both scenarios create openings that you can take advantage of. If they're coming to throw a choke, you can peek them with your gun, shoot them. If they're coming themselves to try to put it out, well, you can just defend and hold the angle that you know they're coming around, hit your shot. It also puts out frag bombs, dynamites, all that good stuff, sticky dynamites, whatever you want to call it. It puts them in a scenario where it's pretty unexpected and creates a lot of openings where they didn't think openings would be. So highly recommend using Dauntless, or at least giving it a try and seeing if it's up your alley. But it's a huge game changer for me. It doesn't affect every fight, but the fights it does affect, it normally allows you to win those fights just on itself. All right, my number two tip would be peeking the same angle is fine as long as you mix it up on how you're peeking that angle. There's a lot of people out there that tell you not to peek the same angle twice, to keep rotating all the time. Rotatings and stuff is good, but you can peek the same angle twice, especially if you have like a really fast fire rate weapon. You already hit them once, and then you go behind the angle and then you peek it again. Just don't peek the angle the exact same way. Try to make your head height a little bit different by jumping or crouching, or maybe shoulder peek it to where you just let your shoulder come out and then go back behind. It'll bait out a lot of shots. Just be hard to read on where your head is going to be when it comes around that angle, but don't be so scared to re-peek an angle because, you know, you peeked it once already and it's like, oh no, you can't peek an angle twice. I disagree with that. For me, it's like peek an angle as many times as I want. Just make sure that I'm not peeking it the same way. Make it harder for them to figure out what I'm going to do next. Number three would be using the enemy's weapon against them. Learn the sounds of the different weapons and push when they're reloading or in a position that the weapon they have is weak in. For instance, rifles are weak really up close against shotguns and things like that, and shotguns don't want to be spaced. They don't want a bunch of space between them and their opponents. So you can use those kind of advantages if you know what weapon you're up against, if it's a shotgun or a rifle. One of the biggest game changers, I would say, when it comes to knowledge for Hunt Showdown or the weapons in general would be the reload timings on different weapons. So Sparks has a really long reload, Maynard has a really long reload, Crossbow has a really long reload. Like, all these weapons have long reloads compared to like a Dolch with a clip reload is very quick and they get a lot of shots, so not as many openings, but obviously it's a more expensive weapon. So I would say learning the reload timings of a lot of the different weapons and then figuring out what weapon they have before you get hit by it. So if you hear the shot go off at a teammate or something, you kind of know what you're dealing with. You kind of know how much time they have to reload and if they're going to swap to a different weapon. Like, pick up on those kind of hints to know where the gaps are in your opponent's armor. All right, the number 4 PvP tip I have for you is to learn the compounds. It matters a ton knowing how to rotate around the compound, being able to effectively chase someone if they're trying to run away, knowing what you can wall bang in a compound and what you can't with certain ammo. Like, all these things matter so much. Where there's certain tiny little pixel peaks between different pieces of wood and all that kind of stuff. It matters so much in fights. It'll make the difference in 90% of your matches, 100% of your matches probably. Just knowing the compound. Most of the people you're going against that have been playing a while do know most of the compounds pretty well already, so you will be severely behind until you figure out most of the compounds. It can take a long time to learn though, and there's no easy way around it. Like, learning the maps give you a huge advantage. Knowing where strong points are in compounds, how to approach compound safely. This is all stuff that you learn by trial and error. Like, you approach a compound from an angle and you're like, it was really hard to survive pushing from that angle. Maybe I should try pushing from a different angle into the compound. And then once you find something that works, keep at it. Just start pushing from that side. And like, if that's your safe side, then go to that side, push from that side until it fails, and then be like, why did that fail? Is it a bad angle to push, or did they just have a really good position on me? You know, all that kind of stuff. Sole Survivor is one of the best ways to learn the compounds, because if you die, you don't lose your entire build and all that kind of stuff. You can just kind of waltz around while everyone else is fighting over the wellspring. You can just check out different compounds kind of free of charge. So I would recommend checking out Sole Survivor, hopping in there, running around compounds, looking at different angles, seeing if there's anything fun that you can learn from a compound, like how to get up and down a place quickly. There's a lot of random different things like that in different compounds that can give you the edge, and you just kind of got to explore and figure it out yourself, which is part of the fun of Hunt Showdown. Number 5 would be use utility effectively, but always use it if possible. If you're throwing a frag nade or some other utility, make sure you do something with it. There's so many people that will just throw a frag bomb, and that's as far as their thought process went. They're like, I'm gonna throw a frag, there's a dude over there, it blows up, doesn't kill anyone, and it's like, oh, now what do I do, right? Have a plan before you throw, or as you're going to throw. Make a plan of like, okay, if this succeeds and kills this person, I'm gonna move to the right because that's where I'm needed most, or whatever. If this doesn't kill the person, do I push into the position of the frag and hold an angle? You know, use the frag because it's clearing space. No one, if it doesn't hit anyone in there, then you know no one's in that specific place at that specific moment. So it creates an opportunity to push into that angle if you were wanting to get into that angle. And that's what I mean about using frag bombs to create opportunities even if it doesn't kill anyone. It's the same thing with like hive bombs and different things. Use them effectively, but then make plays off of them. If you're having trouble figuring out how to make plays off of them, I'd recommend just using utility all the time in fights and then trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. You will die trying to figure it out. It's trial and error, but that's Hunt Showdown, right? That's Hunt Showdown. Utility also is the best stalemate breaker in the game. There's so many people that complain about people camping or people sitting in bushes or blah, blah, blah. Utility is how you get around it. So make sure if you're in a scenario where it's like, oh, I don't know what to do, they're sitting out there, I'm sitting over here, use utility to try to create opportunities to where the stalemate no longer persists. All right, and my number 6 tip that I have for you guys is to check spawns at the beginning of a match. At most of the time, right at the start of a match, make sure that your surrounding spawns are clear before making noise. Getting ambushed at that first clue makes winning the match extremely hard. And going back to the lobby screen after a few seconds into a round never feels good. So I would highly recommend not making too much noise until you're relatively certain that the compound you're in or the area you started in is free of enemies. You can still move fast, but I would just, once again, recommend avoiding all sound traps until you're relatively certain. This doesn't matter as much for some game modes, but for Bounty Hunt and Sole Survivor, this tip will save you a lot of headaches. Number 7 is put on pressure, right? Always pressure your opponents. Even if you don't actually do anything with the pressure, it will make people mess up. It'll make people have a bunch of options and they don't know which one is the best to pick. And so they'll end up going for something and then you can punish them for doing that. One example would be, let's say you both pick each other, you both shoot, but you hit and they miss, right? How do you take advantage? How do you put on pressure in that scenario? There's a couple of really good things you could do. One, you could throw some kind of consumable if they're in range. It'll make them have to either choose to dodge the consumable, get behind some cover, or heal, right? And if it delays their healing, that's even better because now there's still a one tap as you approach, and then you can just go for an easy body shot. Number two would be to just immediately start closing the gap. And as they're going for the heal, get into an advantageous angle, maybe a height advantage or something like that on the opponent, to where you can peek them at any moment and they don't know if you're going to peek. So maybe they delay their heal a little bit depending on how close you are. Something like that. But don't actually peek the angle. Like, you just kind of sit there. You have all the power and you're not using it, whatever you want to say. So you just kind of sit there for a couple seconds, see what they do, and react to it. If they end up going for a heal, you start hearing that bandage, then you can push and know that they aren't holding the angle. If you don't hear the bandage, then you know they're holding, but they're a one shot. Maybe your teammate can come up behind them and shoot them in the back or something, but just keep that pressure on them and it'll make them mess up. It'll make them not heal when they should. It'll make them throw consumables and stuff when to try to space you, because you know you're putting on so much pressure, and it allows you to waste their consumables and things like that. Like, keep the pressure up and you will usually find a mistake or some kind of gap in their armor, in their defense, that you can take advantage of. All right, the number 8 PvP tip that I can give would be height advantage, okay? Height advantage matters a lot in Hunt. It matters a lot in most FPSs. So if you played a lot of FPSs, this isn't like the craziest tip that you've ever heard in the world, but it is highly effective. And there's certain caveats in Hunt Showdown where it basically negates what your opponent can do. So I'll go into some of those specifics in a second, but I just want to reiterate, height advantage matters, and it matters a lot. Always try to get into a position where you have height advantage. When you enter a compound, you should be looking at the height advantage to see if a team's already there and try to push them out of it so that you can take a really strong position. The caveats I mentioned would be something like explosive crossbow or bomb lance, or all kinds of different weapons that have, you know, arrows, frag arrows, those kind of things that kind of have like a arc to the shot, and they have to land on something before they explode, all that kind of stuff. If you have height advantage, explosive crossbow gets completely negated. If explosive crossbow has height advantage, then you're in a lot of trouble. It is extremely oppressive if explosive crossbow has height advantage on you or is on kind of equal footing. But as soon as you get height advantage, explosive crossbow can't really do much. You can just, you know, dip down behind the height and then it flies up into the sky, doesn't damage you at all. So always be looking for those positions. Even if you're not up against explosive crossbow, there's a bunch of other weapons that get pretty negated by it. And then, even if the weapon does not get negated by it, like explosive crossbow, it still puts you in the position to control the tempo of the fight. So if you need to heal, let's say you peak from height advantage, but you need to heal, then you're safe to do so. They have to approach from a different angle or something like that, and it gives you time to heal. But if you're at a disadvantageous height position, so you're the one on the bottom and someone else is on top, then you don't really have a safe moment to heal. You got to kind of react to what they're doing, and then your reaction will always be slower than whatever they choose to do. So if they choose to heal up there, you have to wait till you hear them healing to know they're not going to re-peek you, and then you start healing, and then they get done with their healing faster, so then they get to peek faster on you as you're going for your heal, right? Or they could get their heal completely off and you didn't even get your heal off in time. So now they're healed and you're not, because they had height advantage. They get to control the tempo of the fight. The person at the height disadvantage has to react to whatever the person in the height advantageous position does. So highly recommend controlling the areas that have height in a compound, and then go from there. On top of that, if you are to die, the way you die in this game is you're standing up and then you fall over and you kind of eat dirt. If you die on height, a lot of the times it cuts the angle off that the opponent used to kill you, which means you're a pretty safe res. If are not in a height advantageous position, let's say someone else has height advantage, if they kill you, they usually have the exact same angle and can kill you on res, so it's not a very safe position. So it's also insurance that if you were to trade or die in some way, that you can generally get back up. Height advantage matters a lot. Take advantage of it. My 9th PvP tip that I think is extremely important in success with PvP would be to always target the weak link. I don't mean targeting new players on a team or something like that. I mean target the person that is by themselves. So if you're a duo versus duo, most of the time you can get into a position where you can 2v1 one of the opponents, whether you cut off the angle from the other one. If you're in a trio versus trio fight or something of that nature, usually 2 people will hang out next to each other or be pushing or something, and then one person will kind of have an off angle or a side angle. And I would say put pressure on that one person that's by himself. Generally speaking, as you get better at hunt, the person that's by himself knows he's the weak link, right? And might try to space you correctly to where his teammates can get over to him in time if you decide to push him. But numbers matter a lot. If you can use him trying to position himself safely against his other teammates, then it allows you to put pressure on the link, right? So let's say there's 3 people and one person goes way off to the left, and then there's 2 people on the right. Well, the guy on the left isn't quite in pushing range, or you can't take advantage. The other 2 people still have angles on the position he's on, right? Then just start putting pressure on the other 2, 3v2 the other side. Like whatever position tends to be the weakest, usually it's the one person by themselves, but sometimes they're spacing correctly, then put pressure on the 2 people with your 3. Do you see what I'm saying? Wherever you can get into an advantageous position, take it, do it immediately, put a lot of pressure on very quickly. Most of the time they'll fall. Most of the time you'll be able to get enough DPS off to where the other person basically has to clutch up or their team is super duper dead. So highly recommend targeting the weak link. A good way to do this is to have vision, to know how far they are from each other and what kind of angles they're taking, but you don't always have vision. So you can use footsteps or whatever to try to figure out where the weak link is. Always put pressure on it and create an opening. All right, and my number 10 and final tip for you guys would be to try to position yourself where you're least likely to get sandwiched. Getting sandwiched in this game matters a ton. For anyone who doesn't know, getting sandwiched usually means it's a term that's used when you get pushed between 2 teams. So there's a team behind you, there's a team in front of you, and you're kind of in the middle. Getting sandwiched in this game is horrible. It's horrible in a lot of different games, but particularly horrible in Hunt because there's not a whole lot of defenses. You don't have a lot of health. Everyone's kind of glass cannons. So you got a ton of people that are dealing a ton of DPS to your front and back, and you can only focus on one target at a time, right? So it's a very difficult position to escape. It's better to not get in that position at all. But if you get in that position, or you find yourself getting into that position, try to make sure you maneuver yourself to where you have a way out. Is there a tunnel that you can use? Is there a cave system? Is there a basement you can run through to rotate to get to the other side of another team? Is there something you can use to kind of back out, like a forest or something, to back out of the sandwich where there's someone in front of you, someone behind you, go to the left or right to try to position yourself out of the sandwich? It matters a lot, and this is the crux of this tip that I think a lot of people might not think about too much is for me, I always picture it as where the teams are in relation to the bounty, because then I can know if I'm about to get sandwiched or not, depending on how I'm approaching the bounty. So let's say bounty is at a certain compound and it starts banishing. Well, you can kind of assume there's a team at bounty, right? So then if you approach bounty, and you heard, maybe some crows earlier on in the match or something that was kind of around where you spawned in, then you can probably assume, right, that team is behind you. because they were pretty close to where you were. You haven't met up with them yet. By the time you get to the boss compound, if you haven't met up with them and stuff, they're coming from the same direction. They're gonna at least hear you. So there's a good chance they'll try to rotate behind you and sandwich you, because getting sandwiched or sandwiching someone is very good or bad, depending on the scenario. Another thing I would say about this is a lot of the times it comes down to a timing thing on if you get sandwiched or not. So if you know there's a team, let's say at Bounty, and you think there's a team behind you, like you got to Bounty before some other team, then you can always try to push the team that is in Bounty and try to kill them before the other team arrives. That's usually a pretty good option so that you don't get sandwiched. You do have to play a little bit more aggressive, take a little bit more risk, but it's better than getting sandwiched. So it depends on your scenario. It depends on how confident of a player you are and stuff. Sometimes the better option might be to just wait outside of compound, let the team that was behind you push up a little bit, and then you can try to sandwich them. But I would just say that it's a lot of the times comes down to a timing thing, and I find if I don't take that opportunity, I get into a bad position. If I do take the opportunity, sometimes I die, but most of the time, you know, it leads to a position where at least I'm not sandwiched. You will get sandwiched at some point in time, but it's about limiting the amount of times you get sandwiched and trying to make the most out of fights before you get sandwiched, if that makes sense. I'm thinking that sums up the 10 best tips I could give you for PvP. It's up to you guys. You can play how you want, have fun with it. These are things I just found helped me the most in upping my gameplay, making it to where I feel like I'm in an advantageous position most of the time. And there's a ton of different positions in Hunt. You're not always going to be able to be in an advantageous position. Sometimes you got to make the advantageous position. And that's what I like to do. That's what I like to try to do in Hunt Showdown. Hopefully it helps you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.